So if I lean, am I still?
You're good right there.
Okay. Yeah, I want to be casual.
Be casual.
Whenever you get.
Am I looking at you?
Yeah, we're just having a conversation. We're just hanging out.
Okay.
Like we always talk like this.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm overthinking it.
Yeah. No, we both are. It's fine. Good to go?
You are all set.
All right. Miss Angelis Cash. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. So I wanted to start this with something special
Oh gosh.
that I have to get from my phone. Found this on Friday after I texted you about this.
Hi there, Alex here. I'm connecting you to a local agent now.
Okay.
Hey, how are you? This is Jordan Crosby with Dealer Real Estate.
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. You want to see the house over there on Tiger Valley?
Yeah.
Okay. It said Zillow was saying you want to see it this evening at like 5:30. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that should be fine.
We were trying to see it sooner, but that was the only time that showed up.
Oh, really? Okay. Let me see. I'll go on like a little showing. Whatever. We have like a showing company that lets us schedule the stuff. So let me see. Let me make sure that that's available, and which it should be, and we'll be good to go. Is it okay if let me get your phone number? I know it tells us the phone number, but sometimes it's not, right?
You
So
sound
is it okay if I
nervous.
get your phone number? That way I can just text you and whenever it's confirmed.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, what's the number?
407 412 1522.
Okay, perfect. I'll text you right now, and then I will get that scheduled, and then I'll text you as soon as it's confirmed, and then we can just plan on meeting over there, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Bye.
How funny is that? We recorded this, or we planned this, and I was like, I have to see if that call is in there.
I cannot believe you found that.
I know, it was funny. I remember, I've told you this before, but I remember I was working at one of my rentals. I was telling Ben earlier, I'm pretty sure I was painting. And the lead thing popped up and you have to answer it. You know how that goes. So I had to answer it. And so I remember being like out of breath, scrambling to like, and you were like, I want to see the house. And I had to like run and get a pad and paper and like write down whatever was. And so.
You sounded stressed.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I didn't even remember like getting on the phone with you.
Yeah.
I don't even remember that.
When I was first listening to it the other day, I could like, I'm listening to your voice now that I know you. And I was like, I feel like you're like in the car with Jim and I'm like, oh yeah, let me get your number. And you're probably looking at Jim like, oh my God, who is this guy? He can't even say his company name properly.
I remember like going to the showing and like, I didn't expect it to be anything that it was. I didn't even like think that when you called me, I was like talking like a real person.
Yeah.
And it's like weird being on the other side of things, seeing how Zillow works.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I remember the showing. I vaguely remember the house. I remember us standing in the kitchen, you talking about how you guys were in the process of like planning your wedding and whatnot, because Kelsey and I were like shortly behind you, I think.
Yeah. I think like 7 months, something like that.
You guys had literally that day did your cake tasting or whatever.
Yeah.
You chose your cake or whatever. So yeah, that was just an interesting thing. And then I remember, I've told you this before, but like leaving and finding out that you were in leasing, and I was like, I'm going to try to recruit her because she's just like me. We both came from leasing.
And you knew people that I knew.
Yeah, and here we are.
Yeah.
So it's came a long way. But, you know, like I said, I know the story, obviously, of you from that day forward very well. But I'm kind of curious more about the previous years. So I know that you and Jim met in Florida, all that, but I don't really know too many details about it. So tell me, like, you know, again, after high school, when you were in high school, what did you think you wanted to do? I'm sure real estate really wasn't on your radar at all.
Never.
But what was your plans, from high school, going into college, all that stuff?
Honestly, I think surprisingly enough, I didn't really have a plan going into college. I just went to community college and signed up for a bunch of classes, and I got my associate's degree, and then I went to UCF.
What'd you get a degree in? Wow. Doesn't even, we can tell that was worth its money. Oh my gosh.
I just got a standard associate's degree.
Okay.
You just put me on the spot. I just was not ready for
Just
that
hold on, let me go
question.
get it out of my filing
I was
cabinet.
thinking about the next thing that I was going to say. And then, so I got my associate's degree from a community college, and then I went to UCF. And then by the time I signed up for my classes, I had way too many just like random courses I was taking that I had to get a bachelor's of arts in interdisciplinary studies. So it's basically like 3 minors.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So nothing specific, but I remember I was at a career fair.
This was there or in Florida?
Yeah, I was in Florida at
Yeah.
UCF. I went to a career fair because I had been in restaurants for years.
That's what I was wondering, what you did, like college,
Yeah.
work-wise.
So all throughout college, I worked in restaurants.
Okay.
And then I was working, you know how it is when you're in college, like you just try to do it all.
Yeah, you don't really have a path at all. You're just like, whatever the next opportunity is.
Well,
If
yeah.
it sounds somewhat interesting, I'll just do it.
Yeah, I
If
was
it
like,
pays like $3 more an hour, I'll do it.
I was like, whatever I can do to just like, I was like trying to stay out of trouble, but I was still going out and
Yeah.
I worked 2 full-time jobs and I was in school. I don't know how I did it.
Yeah.
But I was working in restaurant management, and then I wanted to get out of it. And when I went to the career fair, I found property management, and that's kind of where the rest of my path.
So
led me.
you were doing property management down there.
Mhm.
Nice. Yeah.
So I was working in a luxury apartment community.
Yeah.
They were like, "We're going to take a risk with you. We're going to pay you $13 an hour." And I thought, what a joke.
I think mine was, my first leasing job was like $12 an hour.
Yeah, I think they said 13 and I like negotiated 14.
Yeah. Yeah. No, mine was like $12 an hour plus like $50 for every lease and $50 for every renewal or something like that. So yeah, it was an interesting, but I mean, that's a relatively easy job. The leasing job was relatively easy once you figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
There's,
Well, it was, I think the hard part was dealing with residents, and
yeah.
like I worked at like a place that went from 0 to 100% like
Yeah.
occupied. And so like leasing it up, there was a lot of pressure.
Yeah, see, I never had to lease the place up. I always just, it was just already ready to go. So I was just in the cycle. So, I mean, the Casto, who I worked for, they were, I mean, you probably don't know how much you know them, but they don't like buy new places or whatever. They'll occasionally build a new place, but then once they have it, they just hold it
Yeah.
forever. So
I think they have a lot of older communities.
yeah. They had like it seemed to me like they had a push for a long time where they built up some communities. Then when I was there, they weren't really building, and we would go to these like once a year meetings, and they would be telling us about the plans of like what's going to come in a year and a half down the road. And they have since probably 2018, built a handful more.
Oh, yeah.
But in my like short 2 years there, it was just like we had what we had.
I remember you telling me when you were working, I can't remember which company you worked for, but you were sitting in like the like common area and you were just watching TV.
Yeah, and they fired me.
Your
Yeah.
manager saw you like watching
Bullshit.
TV or something.
Yeah, oh, I'll never forget that. Yeah, they fired me. They were just like, it was a Saturday, and it was like an OSU football game day, I'm pretty sure. And it's a Saturday, I'm the only one in there, and like from where that like living, you know how leasing offices, it's like you walk in, there's like 2 little offices most of the time, and then there's like a living room in the back.
Yep.
So it's, and like from where the couch was there, the TVs was in the middle, and there was 2 windows, and from the windows you could see the parking lot. So I
Yeah.
could see when people would park. So I would just walk over, and the reason I got in trouble was because one of the tenants, who ironically, I was friends with this tenant, her mom called and couldn't get a hold of me or whatever. I guess I didn't hear the phone. She just called once, and really what it was I had a new manager. This new manager had just came in.
She wanted you to know.
She wanted her people there. Apparently, I found out this after the fact, but she wanted her old staff. They were like, go to Chestnut Hill or whatever. And she was like, I want my staff. And they were like, no. So then she was like, well, I'll just axe Jordan. I was the top leasing agent in the company.
Do you remember her name? You don't have to
Yeah, I
share.
remember
but-
her name. It was Mandy. She still works there. Hopefully she sees this. I really don't have any
Yeah.
spite against her. I didn't really know her that way. I mean, she was super nice, but I know that she just wanted her staff. And she was very by the book.
Yeah,
Scott, the previous manager, was more like,
laid back.
yeah, he was more like, who cares? Like, he understood, like, what's the down, like, he's not doing anything wrong,
Yeah.
you know? And she was like, no, you have to be in your chair. And I was like, okay. So, but in hindsight, it's the best thing.
You're like, is this prison?
Yeah, it's like the best thing that happened to me, really. Because I literally left that day and went and got my real estate license. Or, like, signed up for classes. So-
What brokerage were you with?
At first was Carlton, Bob's place. And then because he taught the class. Did you do in-person classes?
No.
Yeah, Bob like taught the majority of the classes, and so I was like, I'll just sign up with him. I'll have like the teacher as my broker, and then I quickly realized like he was not that. He was a teacher.
Yeah.
Like he ran the brokerage, he owned the brokerage, but he was never there. So
Yeah.
there was like no broker. So then I switched to Signature Real Estate for a while, which was all good, but I just wanted to run my own thing.
I just realized I never had asked you those questions.
Yeah.
That's
So
curious.
those two places, and then I was only licensed for 2.5 years or something like that, and then started the brokerage. So yeah, I was actually looking this morning because we're having this at my numbers.
Yeah.
Year to year, and like my year one to year one or whatever, and like my first year I did 3 deals. All of them were my own houses, so no clients. Second year I did 6 deals. 3 of them were my own houses. And then from there, I think I like went up a good bit, maybe like 15 or something like that. But the point of it is, I looked at you, and you're like last year you did 7 deals, and like had a kid in the middle of that. So
And this year's cooking up to be
yeah,
really
exactly.
good.
I know. So I've talked about it to people all the time. I'm sure I've even talked about it to you, but like people always beat themselves up in their first year of like, I'm not doing anything, or they see how many other agents are doing, bigger numbers. But it's like your first and second year, you almost can't really compare. You're like
You're
just
learning.
greasing the wheels for the machine to take off. But which obviously you've done. But that makes sense. The restaurant thing's interesting to me. I didn't know you worked in restaurants. I've, since becoming a broker, have learned that people in the service industry, not everybody, but a lot of times tend to do well because it's a similar thing. You're like dealing with chaos. You got to handle one person one way, another person another way, keep track of multiple things happening. So that makes sense that you've
got to be really good at multitasking.
Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting that and then what was Jim always doing fitness when personal training stuff when you met him?
Yeah, so when we met, we started dating, and then he moved up to Delaware and was doing like an internship over the summer at University of Delaware, and then he moved back and moved back temporarily, and then he had to move back to Ohio because he got really sick. And then once he got better again, he actually moved to Columbus.
You guys were dating consistently this whole time?
Yeah, it was crazy. He moved back to Columbus, and he got an internship with the Blue Jackets. He started working back in there, and then it turned into him becoming an assistant strength coach. And then COVID happened, and then
this whole time you're doing leasing.
Yep, still doing leasing. When I moved up here, I was actually working part-time at P.F. Chang's.
So were you trying to get him to come back down there?
No, so I like when I lived in Florida, I felt like I wasn't really growing. I felt like, I lived at home with my parents. I was trying to figure out what was next for me. And I felt like I had already made a lot of friends up here, mutual friends of his, their significant others. And when he told me, he's like, I want to figure this out, but I am not living in Orlando. I was like, okay, I'll move.
You have to, make the decision.
Yeah. I was like, I'll move, and it's been the best decision I ever made. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you guys do, like I said, you obviously are good at making friends with all your friends that you've had just from the apartments that you worked at and everything else. And again, that's why I knew your sphere when growing into being a realtor. I knew that you would just work your sphere. There's a handful of agents that will train, and I can kind of tell, like, this person's not super social or whatever. They're just quiet. They don't have like a good sphere to tap into necessarily, but I knew that would be your main thing.
I do feel like there's always like a niche though for like people that are really shy. They probably connect with people that are really shy. And for me, it's like you said, I've really dived deep into my sphere of, people that I've met at the apartments or, friends that have turned into basically family and, random leads on Zillow or Realtor.com or someone that told someone or someone that saw me on Instagram.
Yeah, but you also have like your personality, you have like, I don't really know how to describe it, like almost like a welcoming feel to you. Like when I was showing you guys houses and we kind of clicked, at this point, you also have been an agent enough to know there's some people you can you click with as clients quicker than others. Some people you just don't click with at all.
Yeah.
Like we clicked relatively quickly, and when we would even make casual jokes about like going out for dinner or drinks or golf or whatever it was, like clients will do that stuff with me. And like in the back of my mind, sometimes like, I don't really want to do that, or
Yeah.
I couldn't really, like, I have fun showing them houses, but I don't really see myself hanging out with that person or whatever.
Yeah.
But like you have a different aura to you or whatever, where it does seem like pretty easy to befriend you, or you'll befriend the other person, and so I'm sure that just works wonders in your world. Like you're easy to get along with.
Yeah, I knew honestly that we were gonna kind of become friends when we were in our group text and you and Jim were making fun of me because I could not figure out how to sign the documents.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was and we had quite the home search. I mean, probably for me to this day, we ran into like consistently the most weird shit.
I know.
Home search.
I
Like,
actually remember like counting once. We looked at 31 homes and we put 8 offers, and we put the 8. That we knew that was it.
Yeah.
But I remember we looked at the porn home.
Oh yeah.
And then we looked at 2 different houses. One, it was like a bunch of kids just sitting on the couch, and every room was a different color of the
Insane.
rainbow.
That might have been the same day, or it was right around each other. We had a day where I think we saw like either back to back or 3 houses back to back, where there were people inside the
You're
house.
like, I swear, this is not normal.
Yeah, it was the craziest thing. But yeah, the porn house, the guy was, and it like smelled like weed in
Yep.
there too.
He
And the
was
guy was
older
just
and he was following us
around.
around in every
The
room.
weirdest situation of all time. Yeah, those are the worst. It's funny now. I'm sure for you probably felt awkward as a client, and now you know my pain as the agent. I'm being like, oh my god,
Yeah,
I
you're
can't.
like, please, I just want to leave.
Yeah, that was, and we had to put the porn house day. We had to put our freaking cat down that morning.
I forgot about
at like 8 in the morning or 9 in the morning or
That's
whatever.
when Kelsey sang
then-
in the car.
Yeah, my ass was like, well, I got to go to my clients' houses. So I wasn't taking the day off. I had to go meet with you guys. So yeah, she was in the car the whole time. But yeah, we had, like I said, there's been a couple other times, I'm sure, in my career where I've shown houses with the person in there. But there was something about that day, that house with like I think it was like an Asian family. We knocked on the door, and I just remember opening the door, and they were just all sitting directly on the couch.
You were like, oh,
Holy
God.
crap. And I was just like, I remember like, because I remember walking in, you will go upstairs to like the kitchen is on like a middle level, and Jim and I were up there, and the little kid was like following us around. It was just like at our like knees, just kind of, I don't know, following us around. It was crazy, and like the house was weird colors and stuff.
It
and,
was
yeah.
just crazy.
And then remember the house that remember when Jim couldn't go? This was maybe like the 2nd or 3rd showing that we had, and Jim couldn't go, and you brought one of your like girlfriends, and it was like a disaster. It wasn't the worst house in the world, but it was pretty bad. But it had that pool, and you were like, Jim and we could fix this up. We can fix this place up. And I was just like, are you sure? I was like, it's going to be a lot more work than you think, especially that pool. You don't remember that?
I do, but I'm trying to remember who went with me.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen the person before or again. I didn't really pay too much attention either, but yeah, I just remember you were just the new buyer that had
I wanted a
stars
house.
in your eyes, and like everything you were seeing was like a glimmer of, and I was like, this house is rough.
I think that house was actually, it was either that one, that same day, it was either that one or another house that was listed by an agent from DeLusso.
No, that house wasn't ours.
Then it must have been a different one, but it was like that same day. I think we looked at 1 or 2
Yeah.
other houses.
Might have been, but I'll never forget, because I've told you this before too.
It had a weird like backyard too. It wasn't even like really a backyard. It was,
Yeah,
like,
it was weird. I remember, but I've told you this, I remember that day you wore like crazy freaking contacts too. And I remember I was like, I couldn't like, I was looking at you and I was like, holy crap, her eyes are freaking me out because they were so like, I don't know, powerful.
These are my real eyes, okay?
Yeah, well that day I was like, sheesh, this girl's eyes are crazy. But yeah, we had an interesting ride, but it was good. It was a good bonding experience. So, and I mean, I don't know, hopefully I subconsciously kind of, in hindsight, trained you on how to like help clients, but also be friendly with it. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to be like super buttoned up the whole time. You can make it a fun thing, which again, just even if I wasn't there, you would have naturally been like that anyway. That's just your personality, but kind of casually trained you on like, you can make it a fun experience because like I've had plenty of clients where we become like friendly, and stuff. That's the way you want to be. It's how you get referrals and all that. Down
I
there.
remember like when we were in the middle of our home buying search and you were just putting those little bugs in my ear about me becoming an agent. And I was like, this actually is so much fun. I didn't think about any of some of the challenges that I would go through, but I mean, I've enjoyed it, and I mean, I've like made some friends doing it and helping people, and just like the experience overall has been so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, you help people do like some of the biggest things of their life, whether they're, having a kid and needing to buy a house to start a family, like, that's a huge deal, or whatever. It's pretty rewarding. Now, of course, like you've definitely experienced it. You'll have those clients that are not as rewarding to work with, that are, that don't really appreciate what we do or whatever. That's just a part of the business. But for the most part, it's rewarding.
I think too, like some people don't realize like how important it is to have an agent that is really friendly, that is willing to communicate, that is willing to ask those questions. Because I know there's a couple of deals that I beat out last year that we weren't even the strongest offer. But literally people are like, I hope your clients know, or the other agents, like, I hope your clients know that you're the reason why this offer is getting accepted.
It's a huge factor. It's a huge factor. And like, because at the end of the day, like, let's say we're working with buyers. If the seller is going to listen to their agent for the most part. So, if you're warming up to that agent and they like you, they're going to, if two offers are pretty close, they're going to, nudge more towards your offer just because they know that you're going to be easy to work with or whatever, versus being the abrasive agent to every single deal. Like, especially if you're abrasive all the time, you're going to build up a reputation, and then you're in the future going to get hurt with that because they're going to remember how hard you were to work with, years ago.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You just got to be, you got to be personable, not only with your clients, but also, with the other agent too.
Well, there was an agent that I worked with, I think like a year and a half ago, and I will never forget his name. But it was one of those experiences that was like, I hope I never have to deal with him again. Like, I honestly feel, I've seen a couple of listings with his name, and I've been like turned off by them because of the experience that I had with him and how like aggressive he was.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, I don't know if you remember in training, but I'm sure I told you, like, you learn almost more from the other side. Like, when you're the buyer, you learn really well how to be a good listing agent. And then when you're a listing agent, you learn how to be a good buyer's agent, because if you're a listing agent, someone just sends you an offer and then doesn't really say anything, you know, all good. But then if you have a buyer and you send over an offer and you're like, hey, these are super great first-time home buyers. They're really excited. They love the house, blah, 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 blah. Like, you're going to be like, oh, I kind of liked how they handled that, And so, yeah, you learn. But we've all had those agents where whatever they do is so bad or so abrasive that they're like burnt into our memory. That's like what you should always try to avoid with your whole career. So yeah, I mean, you've also had some interesting situations with people dying on you.
Oh my gosh.
What was your mind like going through that whole process?
Gosh. I just couldn't, I was like, is this really happening? Like, are you kidding me?
Explain to me, like, I know this was a referral from another one of our agents, but explain to me kind of like the first day meeting this person, your first thoughts of them, all the way through the highlights of the transaction.
Yeah. I wasn't really given like a full heads up about like how sick they were. So when I met with them, it was already an interesting experience off the bat. And then kind of learning their story, I honestly was really honored that he trusted me because it was my first listing and I told him that. But I ended up turning into so many more things. And like, I don't think people realize, like, as a realtor, like, you wear so many different hats. Like, I basically started turning into like a gardener and like his personal chauffeur and just taking care of every different aspect of, his life.
His
and
caretaker. Yeah,
turned into a caretaker. And I remember he asked me to do some things that I just was not, I don't think anyone would have done.
I remember, yeah.
So, I mean.
Yeah, I think you texted me and we're like, hey, he's asking me to do this.
I was like, and also.
Like, is this in our, are we supposed to be doing this as agents or no? Yeah.
I think I had like just found out I was pregnant, like right around that time. So I was just like, there was just some things I was like, this is just crazy. And you're like, I swear this is not normal.
Yeah.
And then, he ended up passing away in the middle of, almost going into contract on the home.
Yep.
And then we had to wait for, paperwork and everything. And it was just like, I mean, we did oh my gosh, what is it called? I can't think of the word. An estate, sorry.
Yeah.
I also ended up hosting, an estate
Forgot
sale.
About that. Yeah, because I remember you were telling me that you had to like figure out how to do them on the fly, because I had never done one. I mean, I had bought houses from people who had passed or whatever, but I was on the buying side. I never had dealt with one. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a real, like, honestly, it was a really good experience, but it was also like really sad.
Yeah. It was but But the person, from what I remember you telling me, definitely didn't take care of themselves. Like I also won't forget, because you had Andrew do that open house for you, didn't you? I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
I
and he
remember,
like was texting me, and I was like,
well, because you were like, all right, don't smoke in the house.
Yeah.
Like, do not smoke in the house to the client. And then Andrew gets there for the open house, and he said the guy's laying on the couch smoking during the open
he's like,
house.
I'm sorry, I messed up. I shouldn't have done it. And I'm like,
Insane.
and that was the other hat I felt like I put on. I was already like mom to him.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. But I was just talking about this to other agents before you got here, and that's another skill of an agent. A lot of agents don't have the willingness to, like, I don't know if discipline is the right word,
Yeah.
but kind of check their clients up and let them know, hey, if you really want to do this, we have to do it this way.
Yeah.
Some just kind
That
of
was
do whatever the client wants.
Well, that was another thing too. I had advised him to list the house at a different price, and it ended up selling for the price that I suggested. And I genuinely know and believe that had he listed it at the price that I told him, it would have sold for more.
Yeah. I've had that happen to me a handful of times, and I always just look at those situations like, yes, it sucks that, or I've had times where it was a similar situation. Like I said, hey, the max I would list it at is this. And then I don't get the listing because he doesn't like, what I had to say.
Mm-hmm.
List with someone else super high. It takes a year to sell. And then just same thing. It falls right where I say. And it's like, yeah, it sucks. I lost the listing, but also I used it more as like a confidence base of like, I was spot on.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I knew it. And it's the same with you. Same with you've had other situations where clients didn't necessarily listen to you with the advice you've given, and then, use another agent, and you found out later that they essentially just followed your advice with the other agent.
But they had 89 million years of experience, so they listened to them.
Yeah. And that's just kind of the game that we sign up for. In the beginning for you, because some of those were in your, well, you're still in your beginning stages, I guess, but you were like still so new that you were like nervous if you could even do this.
Yeah.
But, you're going to reap the rewards of that lesson because it like burnt in your mind so much that like, I was right. Like if you have a client, you tell them, hey, we should probably offer $5,000 over list. They listen to you, you get it accepted. You're like, okay, cool. But it's not really burnt into your mind.
Yeah.
It's just like awesome. But when something like that happens, it's burnt into your mind now, and you're not going to forget it. And so, like I said, that confidence you got from that, what seemed like a negative thing, is going to pay dividends for you for like the rest of your career, really. So in hindsight, again, it was another thing that was a negative in the moment, but it's going to be a positive, because there's times, even still for me, like being 10 years into this and all the deals I've done and training and all that, there's times when you like kind of second guess yourself because it's not certain. Like we are taking our best guess based off the information that we can gather on how to price this house or what strategy to use or whatever, but it's not like there's a defined correct answer. And so you don't know, but so you have to use situations like that to kind of prove to yourself, hey, I do know,
Yep.
They didn't use me, but it still worked out exactly like I predicted. And once you become more experienced, you realize that happens more times than not. It's honestly to the point where it's a surprise when it doesn't work out. Because a lot of times, the market is somewhat predictable. If you know what you're doing, like if you have some experience, and it's predictable, you can tell where a house is going to fall in pricing, and if things have been going multiple offers in that neighborhood or whatever. So
I feel like now that I'm like on year 3, I feel like I don't have as many clients really second guessing me. My favorite part is when the parents come around.
Oh yeah, that's
And
always fun.
You went through it with me. Like my mother-in-law tried to talk us out of buying a house, and God bless her, but
she intimidated me.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, I'm not, Some people, you know how it is. The parents show up, and like I'm already comfortable with you guys. So now I'm like, we're walking through this. I'm just trying to gauge her, like how much is she into this? Because like again, it's not like you guys text me for, hey, she's on board with us buying, or she's not on board, or she likes this neighborhood. I don't know anything about her opinion yet. So I have like 3 minutes to watch her and get her opinion. And she was like kind of like stone faced the whole time, which to me is like, I'm naturally going to take that as a negative, even though it probably wasn't. But I was like, oh crap. And then she was just like, you don't want this house. You want the bedroom to be on the first floor. I'll never forget it.
She's like, you'll understand when you have children.
And you guys loved the house too.
Yeah.
Like that was like your house that you loved, which is like, that is the worst case scenario. But she wasn't wrong. It was just like you said, we had looked at a handful of houses, and And so then we just had to kind of walk that tightrope. And how I've always been as an agent is I'm not going to like press you one way or the other. I'm going to be like, look, take all the information that you've gathered from all the houses we've seen, how many offers are on this house, her opinion, everything, and then like, go after it. And you still went after it, but I think we were like the second best offer or whatever. But that was, and I've told
When
you
we
this
wrote
in
our
training.
letter.
Yeah, I've told you this in training though. It's always like when that happens, and it happens often with people where they fall in love with a house and then they get outbid, is it goes one of two ways generally. Either they get just defeated over the whole process and kind of putter out, which is more of a rare situation, or it just like lights a fire under the ass to be like, we're not going to lose out on the next one. We're going to do whatever it takes, which is kind of what you guys ended up doing.
Oh, yeah.
So
And now it's a rental property.
I know. Yeah, as I'm saying, now you're a landlord. So
I know.
yeah, I was actually just thinking about this the other day. This is not great advice coming from a realtor, if we're trying to make money. But again, I don't really look at my job that way. I look at my job as like doing what's best for the client. In reality, I think people are crazy to sell their house. Like, I just think nobody should sell their house. Like, it's an insane, unless you absolutely have to have the cash to buy another house. But even then, you can get a home equity line of credit or do a cash out refinance. But it is insane to sell a house. You should just you should buy your house, rent it, because then you're offsetting your debt to income ratio, and then buy your second house.
I know. I feel like a lot of people are just scared because they think that being a landlord's going to come with all this stuff. And, maybe I've gotten really lucky so far, but I mean, honestly, I found my renters on Facebook Marketplace.
You found them fast too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I posted our house, and I had people like banging the door down to come see it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not that bad, you
No.
know, as long as you take the time and vet the people properly, and it's not like they're calling you that often, about stuff. Now, from my experience, you'll have certain tenants who are a little bit more needy, and well, this from just leasing. Some people like need you to come in to change a light bulb, and then other people like will have their house flood and just not even call you, so.
Yeah, he'll be like, I cleaned the air conditioning, or I got it serviced. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
Or he said, the toilet ring was leaking last week and I fixed it. We're like, okay. We've gotten really lucky.
Right, yeah, and that's how, that's why I say it's worth it I told you guys when you bought that house and, you had brought up when we were hanging out about potentially moving on to another place, and I told you, you need to rent it. I tell my clients all the time, if you're willing to, you should try to rent the house, because that's how you build equity, build wealth is eventually when you sell this house, maybe you can rent that house. Obviously it gets to a point when your house is so nice that it's hard to rent, but I still think your house that you have now, you're at the top of that zone.
Yeah.
But I think you might be able to rent that too. And then you have 3 houses that you've, accumulated in all this equity building, and that's where you build wealth. So again, I was driving or something today and had that realization. I'm like, it is dumb to sell a house. And terrible to say, because that's our biggest problem is low inventory. And maybe that's a part of the problem is people realize that. People are, it's one thing to have 35 rental properties. I get that. That's a lot of work. But to have just one, and especially when it's your old house, all the issues of the house.
Yep.
That freaking doorknob always is loose, or the garage door kind of sticks, or what, you know the house. So when there's going to be things. It makes sense to at least try it. And hey, you rent it for a year, you absolutely hate having a landlord, okay, sell the house. But if you want to build wealth and really fully take advantage of the real estate game, you shouldn't sell your house.
Yeah, Jim's already talking about our next rental property.
Yeah. See?
One thing at a time, okay?
It gets addicting, I know, yeah. Yeah, speaking about your guys' professional ambitions, when we were on your home search, you just casually forgot to tell me about another unbelievably massive step you were taking in your life of buying a gym.
Yeah.
So how has that process been, being a gym owner and learning how to run a gym and all that?
Yeah, so we bought our house in March, and then we bought the gym in May. And Jim was already working there, running his own business, and he told me whenever he first started working there, he's like, I'm going to buy this gym someday. And here we are, almost 3 years later. We're actually in the middle of doing a complete rebrand and renovation. So it's been a lot, but it's been great, and it's taught us so much about business, things that we can do better. I've gotten more comfortable being in front of the camera. I do it on a weekly basis at this point.
Yeah, you do crush the video game. I've thought about that even for you potentially doing stuff like that with us here if we ever get to that point, because that is, having somebody that's just willing to run around and tell people, hey, do this, because it's like you got to get them out of their own way. And if there was somebody like you, again, you're the perfect storm because your personality and like people, you're likable and trusting and all that. So like people would be willing to be like, all right, I'll do this goofy ass thing she wants me to do because they know that it'll be in their best interest.
Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, the fact that you're able to do that is huge for that, and I'm sure your trainers appreciate it and all that. So.
They always laugh at it, and they're like, "What are like?" I'll walk up to them, I'll slowly creep up to them, and I'm like, "Hey," and they're like, "I don't want to be on camera today." And they do it every time. They normally don't say no to me. So
that's how it is though. But that's again like I see it with agents. It's like when you push them to do things they're uncomfortable with, they don't like it in the moment, but they know they're like, that's what they're here for. They're here. They want their broker to push them outside their comfort zone. They want you guys to help them grow their business, get more clients, so.
Well, this is actually something we were talking about before, like I even got here. We were talking about how what I'm doing here on a daily basis and like you owning the brokerage, it translates a lot to what I do as a gym owner as well. And a lot of the time we'll have these like mentorship meetings with our coaches and I'm like giving advice to them and I'm like, this actually would be a really great idea for real estate.
Yeah. I mean, they're parallel worlds, and marketing is, I say in training all the time, marketing is an interesting thing where if something works for you, even if it's like like a t-shirt ad, like there's a way where sometimes it could still work in our world. You just have to kind of, use whatever that strategy is in a different way. So, but our worlds, they're almost the exact same. It's very interesting. You deal with, as a broker, my job is to essentially like push the agents to grow their business, try new things, try to market themselves in different ways. And obviously it's frustrating when they don't do the things, especially when they come to you and say, hey, I really want to do better this year. But then we give them advice or whatever, and then they don't do anything,
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's been a learning curve for you.
Every time, like, I feel like sometimes I'm like just talking to myself. And it's like you come to these meetings, and I had a meeting with Ben even a few weeks ago, and I took notes.
Yeah.
Because I want this year to be better than the last two combined.
Yeah. And one thing I've learned in the real estate world is like, as long as you try, even still, like now that I would maybe be considered a veteran, like I have like a little bit of a direction in my mind, but it's not like I have like, it's not like you go into my home office and I have like a freaking whole marketing plan, like Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'm doing this, and Wednesdays I'm doing, it's like I have a general direction and I'm just doing things in general, but it's not like super, super defined. And so as long as you're just doing stuff, your business will grow, Like I said, I looked at my like graph of my sales year over year, and it grows every single year. There was, 1 year when I had, 2019, right before I started the brokerage, was when I had closed my most transactions. But that was obviously because I didn't have the brokerage, and now the brokerage takes up a good bit of my time. But even since then, I like took a downturn and then kind of goes back up again. So that's how yours should be. And again, agents should always compare themselves to themselves. Compare yourselves to other people to a degree, or take bits and pieces from other agents that are on a similar playing field as you as far as transactions go. But yeah, every year it should just be making sure that you're doing more than you did last year, because it should not, like almost effortlessly, you should do more deals because your sphere is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You have more referrals, you have more reviews, you have all those things, So you got to be doing something wrong for it to slow down a good bit. But yeah, I'm trying to think. So what does you had another interesting thing happen to you last year with having a child. How was that whole process of?
Oh, I was like, wait, what do you mean?
Well, becoming a mother in the real estate world, how was that? I mean, because you did all of these things: buying a house, getting your real estate license, owning a gym, becoming a mom in like what, a year and a half?
Yeah.
Most people, one of those things is like a lot. So to do all those things, and then so how was that process of not only being a real estate agent, but being like a newish, trying to figure out the real estate world, and then be like, okay, now I got to figure out this whole other world too.
Yeah, I definitely, as soon as I got pregnant, or I found out I was pregnant, I didn't take my foot off the pedal. I kept going for probably the next like 3 or 4 months, and then I started to slow down a little bit. And then once I started kind of getting the swing of things again, I started picking back up with like doing some showings and, doing some showings for agents outside of the brokerage. And then I was on maternity leave because I was doing this on the side only at the time. And then I went back to work. And then my second week back to work, then we moved to our new house.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Oh, I don't even know where my brain could process all of it. And then I honestly, the last quarter of the year, I mean, I had a pretty good quarter.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't really, I mean, so a lot of people will have a baby and then, either while they're pregnant or right after you've had the baby and now you have him around all the time, like could find a way to be like, oh, well, I don't have time to do anything.
I mean,
you had a lot going on and you still just kept trucking on through.
There was times where, if a client texted me last minute, like, I want to go see a house in 30 minutes, I'm like, I got to bring my son.
Yeah.
And they loved
that's
it.
Normal. Yeah. I feel like you'd be a weirdo to judge somebody.
I think some of them actually preferred it.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
seeing him. But
yeah. I mean, I would be lying if I didn't think about times when I strategically bring old Ted and Gracie with me and like, their dog, especially if like clients have like little kids and I pull up and their heads are hanging out the window, like, the kids are like, oh, I got that. Immediately, again, as I preach so much, like being relatable, it's like, oh, look, they're a normal person just like me,
I've actually gone back and forth because in my new neighborhood, I want to do some, door knocking. And I've kind of gone back and forth and like, will people not like if I'm, pushing my son around in a stroller or like wearing him in his like little, I don't even know what the attachment's called right now.
I know what you're talking
but
about.
I'm like, what if like, are people going to be super turned off by that? But I'm like, no, I think it's relatable. I'm a mom. I'm a working mom. Like, I'm trying to grow my business and I'm doing it to support my family.
Yeah. I actually just saw, ironically, like a video on Instagram a couple of days ago of a guy. He was like a roofing company salesperson and he had like had a coffee cup and he was explaining how he used to do door knocking for a long time without a coffee cup. He's like, and then he realized if he just has a coffee cup with him, his sales went up dramatically. And he's like, and it's because it seems more casual than like a guy standing out there with like a clipboard. Like when you peek out there and it's just a dude with a coffee cup, he's like, people think I am literally just a guy that's actually working on a house a couple doors down and I just casually walked over here. So it's like, even though you live in the neighborhood, if it was just you there, people might think obviously you're a salesperson or whatever, but obviously, definitely if you have a stroller or your baby strapped to you, they're gonna probably think you need some type of help and will definitely, chat with you. And again, beyond that, it being relatable. Yeah, I mean, I think that's
one of my more genius marketing ideas.
Yeah, exactly. But your brain works just like mine. You're like constantly, casually thinking about stuff in the back of your mind at all times. And you have a great neighborhood to tap into. I mean, there's some nice houses in there and whatnot. And then especially if people are leaving that neighborhood to upgrade, I mean, those are some high price tag
Trying
homes.
to make some friends here.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got to tap into that. You got to hold some events in the neighborhood and all that stuff.
We actually have like a kind of like a sip and stroll, I think in May.
Yeah.
And I told Jim, I was like, I don't want to be one of the hosts. I want to go to the houses and make friends.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it as marketing.
Yep, 100%. That's what you got to become the person of your neighborhood, whatever it is. If you own a gym, but if you go to the gym, like be the agent who people know that person's an agent at your gym, at your church, wherever it is. That's the whole game. You got to do it. The trick is to do it without being so annoying or over the top about it, because you can be annoying. But if you do it casually, you just kind of let them know, hey, I'm an agent. I'm here if you need me. Then people will trust you.
Well, this is actually another thing too. When I had a meeting with Ben, we were talking about how you need to talk about what you're doing constantly, but not in the sense where you're being annoying about it. It's like, I think for a little while on my personal page, I wasn't talking about my real estate as much as I should have been. And I think sometimes people forget that you're in a certain industry if you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've been trying to do at least once a week, where I'm cross-posting and I'm sharing like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still doing this. So without me being like in people's faces and direct messaging them.
Yeah, exactly. Because people follow your personal page for you and who you are and the things you're doing and all that. But again, you do have to trickle it in, especially if you're posting, somewhat informal or formal stuff. Like if you're posting about some interest rate news or something. I mean, almost everybody's interested in that anyways. Again, if it's all you're posting about, that's something else. But, you know, if you're just kind of casually dropping some info, you wouldn't be doing that if you're not in the real estate industry, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it definitely makes sense. So let me ask you this. So looking back on your, you know, your real estate career so far, what would be some of your proudest moments of being an agent?
I would say probably when I got my brother and sister-in-law in contract on their house, because the house was in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in Powell. It was on the market for less than 24 hours. They really didn't have to offer anything, you know, out of this world for their house. And the agent, it was accepted like within a couple of hours. So I would say that was one of my proudest, because obviously they're family, so it was really important. But it was also like they didn't have to offer anything crazy, and I was just so glad that they trusted me, and I felt like it was just one of those transactions where I didn't know if the offer was going to be, I guess, necessarily strong enough or was going to be accepted that quickly.
Yeah, because it wasn't crazy. We have a gut feeling of like we're offering significantly over list, like it'll probably get accepted. Or we're offering just right at list. I'm not sure. You know, this is a really nice house. So yeah, and I'm sure going into that, I'm sure like the day that you realize, you know, that the first showings you did with them, you're probably like, I can't mess this one up. This could be catastrophic if I fail this somehow. So having it work out in such a good way, I'm sure is
so proud.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like kind of a toss up, but I remember I think it was the second house that I got in contract. It was one of my old team members, and and so we got in contract on a house in another desirable neighborhood in a very competitive price range. And I remember once we got in contract, I think maybe a week later, I was talking to the other agent, and he was like, "I could not tell that you just got licensed." He was like, "You're going to do amazing in this business." He was like, "You are fantastic at communicating." And again, it was one of those where they didn't have to offer anything crazy. They didn't waive inspection or anything like that. So I was like, that was one of those like aha moments.
Yeah. You can get your clients a better deal just by communicating, you know, being quick, like telling them, hey, as soon as something hits the market, we got to get over there, instead of like just letting them lollygag around, and then it ends up being in multiple offers because you wasted 2 days or whatever. Mm-hmm. So again, it's just the skill and the urgency, and honestly, like just the care. Like if you care enough about your clients to get over there and see the house quickly, communicate to the agent and all that, then you can get them some good deals. So, and it's a whole nother level when it's somebody that's like close to you. Like it feels good to help a random client that a person of a person referred you. You know, so you have like no connection to them. But especially when it's somebody that you've worked with, you've heard their daily life stories, you know them, or a family member, you know, that's a huge deal to be able to close them and know like with 99% certainty that they're pretty pumped about, you know, that they're not just telling you, oh yeah, you did a good job. Like you're like, I know I did a good job.
Well, and with that, I ended up getting another client out of it a year and a half later.
Yeah. That's again how the referral game, I've never really had issues with referrals because I'm trusting, like I am good with explaining why we're doing what we're doing. I'm always like, this is why we're offering over list because of this. Hey, it has, you know, 7 offers. Some agents will just find out it has 7 offers and that'll be it. But I'll be like, all right, the agent will tell me we have 7 offers. Well, how many of those are over list? Or the ones that are at the top, are they significantly over list or are they just kind of over list? You know, you can say things that where you're reading between the lines that helps you, you know, gather as much info as you can for your client. So again, it's just doing all those things that's what separates the more mediocre agents from the good agents who continue to get referrals. Like I've always known that you're not going to have problems with referrals. You know, you just needed to rip the Band-Aid off and go through this first handful of deals, and you dealt with some chaotic deals in the beginning, but you know, you're kind of smooth sailing from here. Not that you're not. You'll have a crazy deal this year, I'm sure. I'm
sure I'll be calling you like, Jordan, help me.
Yes, you definitely will. But But yeah, it's been an interesting ride for the last 2 or 3 years, watching all the things that you've done. Hopefully, you stop doing as many large life changes, and you just kind of stay on the path that you have. But who knows? You'll probably open an aquarium next month or something. So
Jim has some ideas in the pipeline
I
that
bet
he's
he
talking
does.
about.
I bet he does.
I know.
So, well, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we haven't touched on. We went through the college years. We went through moving here. So you said moving here was a pretty easy transition because you already kind of
I
knew a
already
good bit
had
of
friends.
people?
Yeah, I already
Yeah.
had friends up here, and I don't say this against anyone that's back in Florida. But at that time and at that stage in my life, I felt like I didn't have the support and the same quality friendships that I do now. Granted, some of those friendships have gotten even better, but at that time, I was just in a place where I needed like a change and I needed something that was going to push me. And I am telling you, I would not be where I'm at today if I stayed in Florida.
Do you think it's part of that is just the personalities as a whole of the Midwest versus like the Floridians?
I think that's part of it. I think it was living at home with my parents. There's way more opportunity up here. Quality of life is better. I mean, I say that all the time. I never in a million years would have thought I would have lived in Ohio.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Here you are.
I know.
Crushing it. Going to become the queen of Ohio here soon in the real estate
Trying.
world. Yep. So, all right. How long have we been going, Grant?
54 minutes.
Almost on
Dang.
an hour. So, I think that's probably pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
We got some stuff in there.
yeah, I think that'll be good. So,
I was trying to think of things and seem interesting.
yeah, no, you definitely did. You did a good job, especially